Hello, everyone. My name is Bernardo Rivera, and on behalf of the Bloomberg Associates team, I'm thrilled to welcome you today to the virtual launch of Digital City Tools 2020. We've prepared an amazing program for the hour ahead, but before we get started, I would like to invite you all to go to the Digital City Tools microsite and download the 2020 report. Please help us get the word out there. We will be using the hashtag Digital City Tools and would love for you to do the same when tweeting and posting on social media. Please note that there will be a general Q&A session at the end of the event. You're welcome to use the Zoom feature down here to send any questions that may come up during the conversations. Please indicate who is your question intended for and whether you want us to disclose your name to the rest of the attendees. Also, we would like to remind you that this event will be recorded. Without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Todd Asher from the Media and Digital Strategies team at Bloomberg Associates, who will kick off today's conversation. Welcome again. We hope you enjoy this. Hello, Todd. Over to you.
Hi, Bernardo. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. We are very excited to have so many leaders and city aficionados from around the world online with us for the launch of the 2020 edition of Digital City Tools. Over the next hour, we'll give you the most important findings of the report and explore some of the programs and ideas examined in the report. We'll also run a couple of polls to get your feedback on how you view digital priorities. We launched the first version of this report 2 years ago, focused primarily on digital communications from 22 global cities. It invited a lot of interest, specifically from cities wanting to emulate successful programs. If you haven't already, and as mentioned before, the URL to download is digitalcitytools.bloombergassociates.org. Bloomberg Associates is founded on the idea of supporting innovation in cities and aiding in knowledge transfer. We kept this front of mind while creating the 2020 version. This report was almost a year in the making, with contributions from an expanded 30 global cities. We'd like to give our most sincere thanks to all of you who took the time to talk with us and share your thoughts and illustrate your innovative and transformative digital programs. Your digital leadership is making a difference in your own cities and in the cities that are following your lead. The report maps the deployment of 41 technologies across 5 areas: connectivity, data, city operations, transport and mobility, and safety and security. And it looks at how these technologies are applied to specific city challenges and priorities. As you'll soon see, cities are all facing similar challenges. All of the cities included in the report are addressing the issues I mentioned. Many are at different stages of developing technologies to support these efforts, and many are approaching these challenges in different ways. We hope that Digital City Tools will give you insights and inspiration that will help you to address similar challenges that no doubt your city faces too. I'm very pleased that we have Matt Wood-Hill, who performed much of the work to bring this report to life, to present the major findings of the report today. We are also very excited to have Miko Rusama, Chief Digital Officer from the city of Helsinki, who will give us a deeper look at their data-driven preventative healthcare services, which is one of the 6 case studies featured in the report. We are also extremely fortunate to have 2 accomplished digital leaders with us today. Roberta Coco, Deputy Mayor for Digital Transformation and Citizen Services for the City of Milan, and Chief Information Officer for the City of Paris, Neja Lanoir, in a fireside chat with Bloomberg Associates' own principal, Catherine Oliver. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Matt Wood-Hill to share the report highlights with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd, and hi everyone. Let's go to my first slide, please. So I'm going to briefly run you through some of the highlights of the report and the conversations that we've been having with city digital leaders over the past year. The report doesn't focus on the COVID-19 pandemic explicitly, but the first highlight does relate to this. So let's go to the next slide. Now, when we traditionally talk about urban resilience, we talk about the ability for a city to withstand shocks. And these might be related to natural disasters, to climate change, or a resilient economy and jobs markets. But the pandemic has brought home something very specific, and that's the importance of city government to the continuation of city life by providing vital support for residents and by leading pathways towards recovery. And technology has been an essential ingredient in allowing services to continue operating, allowing staff to work remotely, and data to be shared easily and securely. And we explore this in some detail, if we go to the next slide, in our case study on Tallinn in Estonia. We wanted to understand how an advanced digital society would respond to the crisis. So you're probably already familiar with Estonia's highly regarded national digital infrastructure, which is based around two key things. So number one, every citizen has a unique e-identity, which is linked to their national ID card. And number two, the X-Road, which is a common data exchange layer across all Estonian public services. And that allows data to be shared seamlessly between different public agencies. All of Tallinn's city services are available online, and this infrastructure, as well as a number of other factors, which you can see on the slide there, have allowed Tallinn's city services to continue almost as normal. Tallinn uses microservices, which are modular technology components that can be managed and integrated independently of the wider system. And an example of where this has been really beneficial in recent months is in enabling a new voting system that supports local democracy to be developed within just 2 weeks. It runs alongside Microsoft Teams and uses the national e-identity to ratify votes via legally binding e-signatures. But beyond the technology, there are also two things I'd like to draw your attention to. Firstly, that the Mayor of Tallinn backed digital services to continue, which gave confidence to city officials and certainty to residents about what to expect. And secondly, this clear political leadership supports trust between residents and the local government. And the high levels of digital literacy, which already exist across Estonia, have supported the widespread use of digital services at this time. Next slide, please. And the second highlight is about city leadership. And here we're talking about elected or executive leadership. I think in general, when we talk about digital in city government, we tend to refer to more than just technology. We're also talking about ways of working, such as making sense of the needs of residents, things like human-centered service design and agile delivery. But our conversations suggest that this differentiation is not actually all that well understood by city leaders. And yet, as you can see, as we go to the next slide, our surveys revealed that only 2 participants rated their leadership as attaching low importance to the role of technology in citywide transformation. In other words, it's generally seen as quite important. So there's some inconsistency between the endorsement of technology initiatives on the one hand, and how that actually translates to a deeper understanding of digital approaches at the organizational level on the other. Next slide, please. Digital and technology leadership roles themselves, they're evolving as it's increasingly recognized that dedicated leadership is needed in certain areas, and the nature of these roles is changing too. They increasingly have a much more strategic dimension than before, with CIOs, that Chief Information Officer role, tending to run departments, not just manage operations and infrastructure. Chief Digital Officers, who have a strong policy and strategy focus, are becoming more common. And as you can see from the chart, the Chief Data Officer role is the joint most common in our research. And this data leadership role is also seeing a shift in emphasis from one that may have once been more about data governance and management to one that's now focused on data strategy and analytics. Next slide. And this concept of digital being about more than just technology is not always well understood by city officials beyond the leadership either. Through the research, we heard many examples of how municipal digital and technology teams are working on specific city-wide challenges and how their work, and how their work is often external facing as much as it is internal. The case studies in our report, which take a deep dive into leading examples of digital projects, there's 6 of them in total, all have a common ingredient, and that ingredient is collaboration. Digital approaches cut across functional areas after all, and we see digital teams working in partnership with both other city departments and external stakeholders. So in one example, the fairly unsexy area of cybersecurity, the Municipality of The Hague runs an annual engagement event called Hack The Hague, which draws attention to the work they're doing. It invites other stakeholders to be involved by bringing together people from across the industry, and they also use it to carry out some penetration testing. But in many cases, competition between different city departments and different public agencies still exists. Each department may actually have their own way of doing things and sometimes even their own technology systems and teams. So collaborative approaches broadly have not become the norm just yet. Now moving to highlight number 4, the report takes a look at trends in 5 technology areas in detail. So just to remind you, Todd did lay them out at the beginning of today. Those areas are connectivity, data, city operations, transport and mobility, and safety and security. And I'd like to give you a sense of what you can expect from the analysis in the report of these areas. So here on the screen now, you can see the chart for connectivity technologies. We asked participants throughout the research to self-report the amount of experience they have of deploying different technologies in their city, right through from none to experimentation phases and different live phases, which you can see in the key along the bottom of the chart there. And in total, we've reviewed 41 different technologies. This graphic, therefore, shows the outcome for the survey of the 7 different connectivity technologies. I'll focus in on one briefly, 5G, which is represented at the bottom as an interesting one. Clearly, it's a very new technology, but as you can see, only 19 participants of the cities we surveyed responded to this question, indicating that 11 of those cities are not actually doing anything at all at the moment. And only a few, which are depicted in light brown on the very left-hand side of the chart, are actively using 5G networks in their operations. The rest are still experimenting. Now, the red and orange colors, which you can see on the other bars, represent deployments of 2 to 5 and 5+ years, are totally absent when it comes to next generation mobile communications because 5G is still a new technology. When we asked people about their thoughts and relationship with 5G, in spite of all of the hype around this tech, many are really taking a cautious approach. They're going to wait and see what opportunities emerge. And at the moment, they're reluctant to even explore its uses until the technology is a bit more mature. On to the next slide. So we've created a similar chart to what you've just seen for connectivity technologies for each of the technology themes we've looked at. And in this donut chart, we've aggregated the data from those 5 themes to give a sense of some macro trends. So here you can see that city governments have the most experience overall with connectivity technologies, the ones we've just looked at, compared to the others. And that overall picture is around a quarter of their general technology deployment in total. And this makes sense because cities are placing emphasis on establishing strong digital infrastructure foundations upon which they can support their residents and city economies, and then eventually build more applications in domain areas such as mobility and public safety. Now, the second highest in terms of overall experience is data services, which takes us on to the next highlight and the next slide. Data-driven decision-making is still a common goal and not a reality. And going to the next slide, this quote from David Edinger in Denver reflects a lot of the conversations that we had. Despite the importance given to data tools, which of course includes really hyped things now like advanced data analytics and artificial intelligence, few cities actually currently have the right data infrastructure, standards, and approaches to data sharing in place to take full advantage of these tools. And so they're struggling to really put the data they already have to work. There are a few exceptions. Barcelona, for example, is using data on air quality captured through its IoT network to inform and evidence policies to better manage traffic congestion in the city. But overall, city government is just at the start of this journey. And so on to my last point, which is in some ways more of a message: incremental steps reap big rewards. There are different ways of bringing about a digital transformation, but doing it incrementally gives the greatest chance of success. Through the research, we've heard how cities such as Milan, Pune, and Sao Paulo are going through ambitious transformation programs in a relatively short amount of time. So it's usually a 4 to 5 year program that goes across maybe one election cycle. And they've been seeing some really big successes in terms of the percentage of services that are now available online and the migration of many of their systems to the cloud. But the general impression from our conversations and the leading examples, which you can read in our case studies, and we're going to hear from Helsinki in a few moments, is that there's no such thing as a quick fix. Because beyond technology, developing a digital culture and embedding digital tools and processes intercity operations takes time, planning, investment, and patience. And that brings me to the end of what I have to say. I'll pass you now back to Bernardo. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Matt. There are probably questions and comments out there, so just as a reminder, feel free to start sending those through the Q&A feature here on Zoom. We will go through them in the last section of today's event. As we reflect on the key findings that Matt just presented, we wanted to run a quick exercise with all of you and get a feeling of where you stand in digital priorities. Help us by answering this pool sum. Which city superpower would you choose to have? Unlimited budget, zero carbon footprint, no partisan opposition, or Wakanda's technological infrastructure? While you take some moments to answer the Zoom poll, we wanted to give a shout out to everyone dialing in to this event. People from cities all around the world, to our friends in London, Tel Aviv, Sofia, Bogota, Paris, San Francisco, Reykjavik, Mexico City. We're truly happy to have you all here joining us today. So we're gonna give it a few more seconds for you to answer. And let's start wrapping up the poll. So thanks everyone for participating. These are the results. Of course, we would all love to have unlimited budget, right? It is my pleasure now to introduce our next guest, Miko Rusama, the Chief Digital Officer of Helsinki, who will take us through the case study of this city that's featured in the Digital City Tools report. Miko, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Greetings from Helsinki. Hope you can hear me well. We believe in a big paradigm shift. We believe that we are transforming from reactive to proactive city, and talking about healthcare, we believe that we are moving towards preventive healthcare on people's terms. Next slide, please. Last year, there was a article in the biggest newspaper in Finland telling about the research that found out that 10% of the people generate 80% of the social and healthcare cost. And there was a direct quote in the article stating that if we were able to identify, treat these people well in advance, that would be hugely beneficial for the state economy. But I claim that it would be also very beneficial for these individuals that need help and healthcare services. Next slide, please. So here is the challenge we are facing here in Helsinki. The pressure on Helsinki's healthcare services is increasing because of aging population. Even if we are doing a lot of segregation development, that is a challenge, and we know that there is a direct link to accumulation of health problems. And thirdly, our city is growing, population is growing, and also immigration is increasing. And at the same time, we are kind of have hard time finding the healthcare professionals. Costs are increasing, and there are long queues to get kind of healthcare services, especially now because of the COVID pandemic that has really put a lot of pressure on our healthcare system. So something needs to change. Next slide, please. So here is the solution, and we are working on called health benefits analysis. So the idea is simple. We try to identify and proactively treat high-risk patients. We have a lot of social and healthcare data from 640,000 patients, and using 300 approved criteria, we are able to identify care gaps, meaning that we are identifying patients or people that most need healthcare services. And by identifying these people, individuals, we are able to invite those to doctor's appointment to get proper treatment. To give you a couple example use cases, for example, we're from the data, we are able to identify patients who use central nervous system drugs. And we try to ensure that these people have a dedicated doctor who can follow up on the medication and patient's condition. Other example is that we are able to identify patients with a high blood pressure and ensure that they get the right medication to avoid heart or brain attacks. Next slide, please. To truly scale up this solution, we need to solve the great clash. The question is, can we use data proactively contacting people? And in one hand, we have very strict healthcare laws that state that we have to treat people's health risks and save lives. And on the other hand, we have privacy laws that say that we have to protect the privacy of the people. If in real life I pass out, I claim that you would call an ambulance. But if you see from my data that I'm at the risk of dying or getting seriously ill, if you look at the strict interpretation of the privacy laws, you are not allowed to contact me unless I have given permission to do so. So this is the kind of tension we have to solve. And there is also the cost of what is the acceptable cost. I mean, if we do it very strictly according to privacy laws, I mean, the solutions can get very, very complicated. And of course, important question is that what is morally right? This is raising a lot of kind of also ethical questions when we have more and more information about people. So how to use the data right for the benefit of the people on people's terms? That is a big question we are now solving and discussing here. Next slide, please. So to summarize, according to our city strategy, we want to be the most functional city in the world, and we are transforming from reactive to proactive city. And we believe that it will bring many benefits to us. We are able to detect health risks earlier and even save lives. We can improve health and provide better quality of life for our citizens. And we are able to better estimate impact of the basic healthcare service. And lastly, we are able to reduce social and healthcare costs by treating problems in advance. So I claim that in many cases, if problems accumulate, it will be much more expensive to solve those. Thank you, that's all from me.
Thanks, Miko, for sharing with us the interesting digital approach of Helsinki in these challenging times. To everyone watching, remember, you can send your questions for Miko and the rest of the panelists through the Q&A feature down here. Now, while we wait for the next speakers, we wanted to run another exercise with you and get your feelings of what your thoughts are about the future of digital. 10 years from now, what digital tools implemented by city governments will have had the greatest impact in people's lives? We'll give it a minute or so for you to participate, share with us your opinion, while we get ready to welcome our next guest in just a few moments. As you know, the Digital City Tools report features a section on technology trends to watch. So if you haven't done so, remember to download it and don't miss out on these insights about the future of digital tools. We'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, so thanks everyone for participating in the poll. Let's wait for the results to come up. Connectivity, that's interesting. Again, go get the report so we can watch these trends more thoroughly analyzed. Following up, it is my pleasure to welcome Catherine Oliver, Principal of the Media and Digital Strategies team at Bloomberg Associates, who will be facilitating our next conversation and introducing our amazing guests. Over to you, Catherine.
Well, thank you, Bernardo. Thank you so much. And as Bernardo mentioned, I'm Catherine Oliver. I'm a principal at Bloomberg Associates, looking after the media and digital strategies team. I'm thrilled to be joined by two visionary digital leaders to hear how they have been using technology and digital approaches in their respective cities. Roberta Coco, Milan's Deputy Mayor for Digital Transformation and Citizen Services, and Neja Lanoir, Paris's Chief Information Officer. Ladies, welcome. If you have questions, please be sure to share them with us using the Q&A feature in Zoom, and we will collect them for our Q&A session at the end of the event. So Roberta and Neja, 2020 has certainly been challenging for all of us. The pandemic has really shone a light on the need for cities to develop digital resilience. I'd love to hear from each of you about how you're thinking of digital resilience in your cities. Since Milan was the first major European city to be affected, Roberta, why don't we start with you?
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me this very important occasion. Okay, so before the pandemic, we were working on a huge digital transformation plan. And we began this digital transformation plan based on 4 pillars: infrastructure, digital services, digital education, and digital skills. And we were working very hard to prepare all our services thanks to a huge interoperability plan. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, in February, we were the largest city in Europe where the pandemic struck. And so we had, we were shocked at the very beginning, but we had to react immediately because the situation was very, very serious. So we leveraged all the work we had done with our digital transformation plan. And so I can say, luckily, we were ready to react. What we did, first of all, we worked to maintain the governance of the city. And so we immediately moved the mayor's committee, the city council, all the tool to manage the city immediately ready to be used also during the lockdown that we were suffering. Second, we moved all the services on mobile because we knew that we had a huge problem of connectivity around the city. Not all the citizens had up-to-date devices, or they were not able to use the services through, through their network or through the website, but they all have a mobile phone in their pocket. And so we boost all the development of services mobile first. One example, one of our key projects was the citizen digital folder, which was reachable on the website, on the municipality website. We accelerated the development of the app. So now all the citizens in Milan can download the app of the digital, the citizen digital folder. And so they can download certificates, they can monitor enrollment to kids to school, they can make an appointment, everything through their mobile. And the third area we worked on especially was our data strategy. As I mentioned, we were preparing an interoperability plan, and the occasion of the pandemic was very important for us to use the data strategy that we were preparing, so we could accelerate the development of specific services, especially to the poorest and to those people who were in extreme need during the pandemic. And so we used our data, we put all together our data, leveraging the smart lake that we were building. And so we were able to act immediately to support especially the people in real need.
Mm-hmm. Now, Neja, there's a sudden uptick in cases in Paris. How has the pandemic changed or influenced how Paris is approaching its digital work?
Thank you. Grand bonjour de Paris, avant tout. You know, we were prepared for some crisis in Paris with different digital resilience plans ready. But because, you know, we have a major threat of serious flooding from the Seine. You know that in 1910, the city of Paris was flooded and submerged, and we have to continuously update our resilience flood plan. We also had a plan for a pandemic crisis. However, this was the first time we had to put it into action. And on the whole, we can say that it worked well, but we did have to adapt parts of the plan very, very quickly. And we learned that having a plan is one thing, but the reality is another. And adaptability is essential. First of all, during the lockdown situation where people were told to stay at home, we had to make sure that our employees could go into work to keep the city running. So the first priority was to give the means to the city hall to enable the employees to work at home or on site. This meant we had to distribute many equipments and install special telecom networks. We also had to make available rapidly and on a huge scale video and conference tools for thousands of employees connected at the same time. So that was for the city hall. And for the citizens, most of the digital services we have already at our disposal were being used, but we also had to develop new services very quickly. Thanks to our Lutes platform, which allows us to reuse blocks already available and save precious time. For example, a digital service to enable cafes and restaurants to stay open by using the public space as terraces. We also extended our digital service of appointment, rendezvous, to enable the social distancing when users came to the city hall when they needed to. So most of the digital services worked very well, but they were not always complete nor continuous. Some of them allowed citizens to initiate steps before meeting the agents physically. And we are now starting to deal more remotely, directly online. So this is something else we are now working on in order to improve this. So the crisis was a real accelerator in making a new way of working possible. We realized that the crisis is not just a theory, it can really happen. And now when we think about the flooding threat, we are aware that Paris may really flood again. I think that is one of the most important lessons we have learned.
Now, one of the findings of our report, the Digital City Tools Report, which thank you, both of you contributed to, is that data-driven decision-making is still a goal and not common in many cities. But your cities are not typical because you certainly are leveraging data analytics and insights into your decision-making. So Neja, could you provide a few more examples on how you're doing this in Paris?
Well, thank you for mentioning Paris. We have made a lot of progress and we are still working on our objectives, and there is more to be done. Before giving you examples of what we are doing, I would like to insist that it's not enough to say that we will set up a data program. We can encounter real difficulties in collecting and analyzing the relevant data from different external and internal systems because they were not always designed to produce the information we need now. A good example could be the parking application, which we created a few years ago. It didn't include all the data we need now. So we had to process and to analyze and complete the data to produce the dashboards, enabling policy decision-making. And we have now a very useful global overview of the parking in Paris. Another example could be the dashboard of the issues in the public space. As in many other cities, we have an application to allow the Parisians to report issues they can see in the public space, graffiti, potholes, bulky trash, etc. And the data produced by this system is very, very helpful to understand and to find out what issues Parisians face and where they are mostly concentrated geographically.
Now, in order to implement data-driven decision-making, you need a strong pipeline of talent in the field of STEM. And Roberta Milan is recognized for its work in promoting STEM and for careers for women and girls. Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to champion this cause in your role as Deputy Mayor for Digital Transformation, and what you've experienced and what you find, and how you advise other city governments that would like to address this to ensure universal change?
Yes, sure. Since the beginning of the mandate, we knew that we have a digital gap in Italy, and especially a digital gap considering the gender. So unfortunately, we still have few girls going into STEM studies. And this is a huge problem, not only for girls, but for our economy, for the social impact that this might have. In a world that is digitalizing and where innovation is running fast, we can't stand having so few girls and women into the ICT sector. And also, and let me say, any kind of jobs today and in the future would need to have, digital skills. So in 2017, we began this huge project called STEM in the City, where we collected all our stakeholders. And so we work with the private sector, with NGOs, with association, with the university, with the researcher school, to help all the youth, especially girls, to understand the value of fulfilling their profiles with digital skills. Why? Because this could give them a very important passport for their future. So this is something that we are doing. And so we are working all year round to support and to organize trainings, courses, debates, events, where we can share the value of digital skills for our youth. Now, this is even more important because we have to face that in the next month, we will probably have an increasing in the under deployment, especially for youth, for many categories. And so we are working not only for sharing the value of digital skills, but also for reskilling. And so we are thinking to enlarge our scope, not only for youth and for girls, but also for all level of people, especially women.
Well, Roberta and Neja, thank you for sharing these insights, and continued success to the both of you. We've been challenged beyond belief in 2020, and there's much more to come. But thank you for sharing your learnings. Thank you for participating in the study, and we continue to look forward to working with you and learning from you. So I think Bernardo has another poll for us. So Bernardo, back over to you.
Thank you, Ko. No more polls this time, but we just heard from our guest speakers about the importance of digital leadership. when pushing for transformation of city governments and the implementation of technologies that improve the quality of life of citizens everywhere. I would like to take a few moments now to tell you about a new upcoming research project we're working on. So marking the 10-year anniversary of the creation of the Chief Digital Officer position in New York City during Mayor Mike Bloomberg's administration, the Media and Digital Strategies team at Bloomberg Associates has started to conduct a new research piece on how digital leadership has evolved over these years in cities around the world. The main objective of this new project is to analyze and showcase different kinds of digital leadership, organizational structures and powers that lend these roles to create a success. Examples of how they have driven transformational change within their cities, including the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We wish to inspire mayors around the world that want to create digital offices or that wish to enhance the digital strategies their cities are already pursuing. We know digital leadership thrives in very different contexts and that each city has faced unique circumstances when pushing for transformation. So capturing the experiences of a wide array of digital leaders will provide us with valuable insights on how other cities can tackle similar challenges and replicate successful strategies. So we can't wait to tell you more about this next upcoming report and share with you our findings in the near future. But now it's time for the Q&A session. So let's welcome back Todd Asher, who will be facilitating this. Hello again, Todd.
Hey, Bernardo. Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone who participated in today's event, particularly our speakers, for sharing their insights and the amazing work that they do every day. I'm sure that there's many questions. We have quite a few that have come across the Q&A feature through Zoom that we're going to respond to now. We have Miko and Neja and Roberta still with us, so we welcome any additional questions that you might have. But I will start on one that has been asked by Rusama. And the question is, to what extent are cities developing city tools separately to their legacy systems? Did you see many examples of cities effectively integrating new digital tools into their more traditional systems? So I think that there's a few people on the panel who can likely answer this. I'll just give a quick anecdote about some of my experience in New York City. I worked in New York City government for about 6 years, and we worked very closely with New York City's non-emergency call center, which is 311. Many cities have similar systems. One of the things that was fascinating when you go to the 311 call center in Lower Manhattan or the Annex in Brooklyn is that you see that the attendants on their desk who are answering the calls have many different terminal systems in front of them. And one of the decisions that New York City had to make was whether to upgrade a system that's associated with the water system. It's a system that was developed several decades ago. The cost of upgrading were significant. And the decision was that it made more sense to cross-train the personnel who would answer calls to have access to incoming questions that are coming in on the mobile application, coming in through the website, or coming in through the call center, and to be able to get information back and forth through these systems, even though they're not strictly interoperable, through the training of the personnel. So in many ways, not ideal, but in terms of costs, in terms of speed of turnaround and being able to respond to citizens' questions, it made a lot of sense while they could map out a plan for upgrading the older system over the course of time. But I'd like to ask Matt Woodhill again to come in on this question and maybe tell us if he has some information from his interviews that could give some feedback on this question.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, it's an interesting one. This is I guess Rishi's asked a very technology-focused question, and I'm going to give him a much more governance-focused answer. Because I think what came through in the research is different models for how new technology projects are initiated and how they're implemented. And not all of those do fit alongside legacy tech in a really clear way. So one common model is an innovation challenge, which could be set by the municipality. And when we see in the US, where Mayor's Office for Civic Innovation exists, that this is quite a common way in which new innovative ideas are brought I suppose, to greater prominence. We also see wider mission-led innovation. And I think in a city like The Hague, of which there's a case study in the report, they've really been pursuing greater cybersecurity support for a much longer period of time. Something I did allude to, which is political leadership, bringing around a really strong mandate, is another way that we've seen that happen. I think all of those are things that can be quite sudden. Perhaps with mission-led innovation, you're able to integrate technologies. But the most effective way, and in our Tel Aviv case study, this is most prevalent, is where internal capability is making a much more organic change possible, where you're thinking about really technology road mapping that integrates existing systems, phases out legacy systems. And then the last thing that emerged from the research, you won't be surprised to learn, is that crisis preparation and response can really focus the attention on what should be developed. But I would have to pass over to one of my colleagues working on the panel working in city government to talk about that. Miko might have a specific example in terms of the rollout of the new digital healthcare system in Helsinki.
Yeah, do you want me to comment?
Yeah, please.
Well, in my understanding, many cities are facing with the kind of challenge of legacy systems and talking about this health benefits analysis, it's currently integrated with the kind of, let's say, old healthcare system doctors, medical professionals are using, and we are in the middle of the deployment process of a new kind of social and healthcare system called Apotti, and now this kind of tool needs to be integrated with that. So in my, if you look at our approach, is that we have made a kind of massive portfolio, let's say, audit, identifying solutions or systems that needs to be terminated, migrated, and identifying systems where we need to invest in. So getting rid of the legacy is one of the kind of objectives, and that will give us more kind of resources to focus on the new innovative solutions. However, in many cases, when you are developing these innovative solutions, you are somehow forced to integrate with something old, and integrations or access to the data sources can be a kind of impediment, especially if many monolithic solutions may not provide proper interfaces. Long answer.
Thanks, Miko. So we have a couple more questions here. We have one from Sanjay, who asks, with regards to digital tools, do you have examples of ways municipalities attract responsible tech? So technology where principles such as sustainability, labor safety, equity are taken into account. And I'd like to ask Roberta her thoughts as this applies to Milan. I would also offer up one of our former questions came from Rusama from the World Economic Forum's G20 Smart Cities Alliance. And I think your question is related more to the private sector, but in terms of creating frameworks for responsible and ethical smart cities, it's one of the things that the Global Smart Cities Alliance is doing, and you can find that online and follow over the course of the next couple of months when some information on this will be made available. But Roberta, do you want to talk a little bit in the context of Milan about how municipalities can attract responsible tech?
Yes, sure. We have been working to put, the needs of our citizens as our first priority. And we have to be very careful when we develop technological project, never to go over, the borders of something that should be considered proper. So what we have done is to work together with universities and other stakeholders, associations, and NGOs to be sure that on one side the digital rights for citizens are secured, and on the other side that our capacity of technological activities is properly considered. And it is always addressing real citizens' needs. And so technology not as a goal, an ultimate goal, but technology as an enabler to do something else. And in this case, we also are considering our role as a kind of service support for other departments and other agencies around the city. And so that the innovation is something that is always used for the benefit of citizens and never the opposite.
Great, thank you. We have a question here about how technology can be used to mitigate the effects of climate change. I wonder, Neja, if you have some thoughts on this issue. Mayor Hidalgo was previously the head of the C40. Paris has been doing a lot of work on climate-related issues. Oh, there you are.
Okay. Yes, in Paris, we have a very important plan to adapt Paris to the climate change. We have to deal with the traffic, with the vegetalization, with how we control the heating of our thousands of equipments. And our data platform helps the city government to make decisions with the dashboard, especially developed to give the data, for example, to understand how Parisians are going to use our bicycle, self-service bicycle, or how they want to visualize Paris. We also installed sensors in our 2000 equipments, and now with the dashboard we can control how these equipments are, how the energy of these equipments is controlled. So I think that the data policy, the data lake, how we can collect and treat the data from external and internal system can help to the climate change. And another thing is that, for example, our internal data center is completely adapted to the new rules, and it hits a district in Paris and an urban agriculture on the roof of the building of the data center. So technology is at the service of the climate change in Paris, and we hope that this will continue during the current mandate, which began in June.
Fascinating. The work that all of you do is quite varied. I think for those who haven't worked in city government, it's hard to sometimes understand the vastness of the work that you do and many of the constraints that you have to operate under. We are so appreciative for your time, for your insights, both today in this presentation and also for contributing to City Tools. We want to thank everyone for joining us. And again, one more time, if you haven't made your way there, you can download the report at digitalcitytools.bloombergassociates.org. We look forward to connecting with all of you in our regular days and business. Please reach out to us with any questions. We hope you and your families stay well, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you.